Throughout history, humans have faced unimaginable challenges, events that tested their willpower, courage, and endurance to the very limits. These are the stories of survival against all odds, stories where death seemed inevitable, but the human spirit proved unbreakable. It was supposed to be an exciting trip for a Uruguayan rugby team. But on October 13, 1972, their chartered flight crashed into the icy Andes Mountains. Out of 45 passengers, 29 survived the initial crash. But survival in this remote, frozen wilderness was anything but guaranteed. With no hope of immediate rescue, they faced sub-zero temperatures, avalanches, and the cruel reality of starvation. Days turned into weeks. Their supplies ran out and desperation forced them to a horrifying decision: to consume the flesh of their deceased companions. For many, it was not just about physical survival, but also battling the mental torment of what they had to do. After 72 harrowing days, 2 survivors, Nando Parado and Roberto Canessa, embarked on a death-defying 10-day trek through the mountains to find help. Their courage led to the rescue of the remaining 14 survivors, a story of endurance that continues to inspire. In April 2003, Aron Ralston, an experienced hiker, found himself trapped in Utah's Blue John Canyon. A boulder shifted and pinned his right arm against the canyon wall. Alone, with minimal supplies, he faced the reality that no one would find him. Days turned into nights. He rationed his water and recorded goodbye messages to his family, preparing for the worst. After 127 hours, dehydrated and near death, Aron made the ultimate decision. With a dull multi-tool knife, he amputated his trapped arm. Freed but weak, he rappelled down a 65-foot wall and walked until he encountered rescuers. Aron later said, "I didn't lose my hand, I gained my life." His incredible story became the inspiration for the film 127 Hours. In April 1970, NASA's Apollo 13 mission was set to be the third crewed lunar landing. But 2 days into the mission, an oxygen tank exploded, crippling the spacecraft. "Houston, we've had a problem," would become one of history's most famous phrases. With the main oxygen supply gone and carbon dioxide levels rising, the 3 astronauts had to improvise solutions using whatever was available on board. They worked with NASA engineers on Earth to build a makeshift carbon dioxide scrubber from duct tape, plastic bags, and manuals. Despite the odds, their ingenuity and teamwork brought them back safely. Apollo 13 is a testament to human resourcefulness and the power of collaboration under pressure. In 1983, Tammy Oldham and her fiancé set sail from Tahiti to San Diego. But a monstrous hurricane struck, capsizing their yacht and leaving Tammy unconscious. When she awoke, her fiancé was gone, and she was adrift in the vast Pacific. With a broken mast and damaged radio, Tammy used her navigational skills and sheer determination to sail over 1,500 miles to Hawaii. Her survival against the odds is chronicled in her book Adrift. On Christmas Eve in 1971, 17-year-old Juliane Koepcke boarded a plane with her mother to visit her father in the Amazon rainforest. But disaster struck. Lightning hit the aircraft, causing it to break apart mid-air. Juliane plummeted over 10,000 feet, still strapped to her seat, into the dense jungle below. Amazingly, she survived the fall but was now alone in one of the world's most unforgiving environments. Injured, with a broken collarbone and deep wounds, she faced venomous snakes, jaguars, and swarms of insects. But Juliane remembered her father's advice: follow the water. For 11 days she trekked through the jungle, surviving on rainwater and scavenging what she could. Eventually, she stumbled upon a boat and was rescued by local villagers. Juliane later said, "I had lost my mother, but I never gave up. I fought for her memory." Her story is one of grit and resilience. In 1823, Hugh Glass, a fur trapper in the American frontier, was attacked by a grizzly bear. Mauled beyond recognition and left for dead by his companions, Glass refused to give up. With broken bones, deep wounds, and no weapons, Glass crawled over 200 miles through the wilderness. He survived by eating berries, scavenging meat from wolves, and using maggots to clean his wounds. Though he eventually reached safety, his story didn't end in revenge but in survival and forgiveness, a legend that inspired the movie The Revenant. In August 2010, 33 miners in Chile's San Jose mine found themselves trapped 2,300 feet underground after a cave-in. The collapse sealed them in a pitch-black chamber, with only enough food for a few days. Faced with hunger, heat, and suffocating darkness, they rationed their supplies, consuming mere spoonfuls of tuna and sips of milk daily. For 17 days, their fate seemed grim, until rescuers drilled a small hole and discovered them alive. Over the next 2 months, a massive rescue operation ensued. Finally, after 69 days underground, all 33 miners emerged one by one in a specially designed capsule, each greeted by a cheering world. One miner later said, "Faith kept us alive in that darkness." In 1982, Stephen Callahan set out on a solo sailing trip across the Atlantic, but his adventure turned into a nightmare when his boat struck something and sank. Left with only an inflatable life raft, Stephen drifted for 76 days, battling sharks, dehydration, and relentless sunburn. He used ingenuity to survive, creating a solar still to gather fresh water and crafting tools to catch fish. Despite losing 30 pounds and enduring immense loneliness, Stephen's resilience carried him through. He was eventually rescued by fishermen near the Caribbean, proving the strength of human determination. In May 1996, Beck Weathers was part of an Everest expedition caught in one of the deadliest storms in the mountain's history. Blinded by altitude sickness and left for dead in freezing temperatures, Beck faced certain death. But something stirred him. With frostbitten hands and feet, he crawled and staggered through the storm, driven by the thought of seeing his family again. Against all odds, he reached a rescue team. He lost parts of his limbs but gained a new perspective on life, later saying, "You don't conquer Everest, you survive it." Much like the Chilean miners, another group of miners in Uruguay faced their own nightmare when a collapse trapped them underground for 10 days. With limited food and no communication, they relied on teamwork to stay alive. Their story, while less famous, is equally a testament to resilience and the global effort to save lives in the face of disaster. In 1985, two young British mountaineers, Joe Simpson and Simon Yates, set out to conquer the previously unclimbed west face of Ciudad Grande, a 20,814-foot peak in the Peruvian Andes. Their climb was daring and ambitious, a challenge that few would even attempt. But what started as an exhilarating ascent turned into one of the most harrowing survival stories in mountaineering history. On the fourth day, against all odds, they reached the summit. Exhausted but triumphant, the descent awaited them, a task that often proves more dangerous than the climb itself. And for Joe and Simon, danger struck hard. As they descended the treacherous ice-covered slopes, disaster struck. Joe slipped and fell, landing with his leg twisted underneath him. The devastating crack of bone was unmistakable. He had shattered his right leg and knee. For any climber, such an injury at that altitude in those conditions was a death sentence. But Simon refused to abandon his partner. Determined to save Joe, he rigged a makeshift system using two ropes, painstakingly lowering him down the mountain 300 feet at a time. The process was agonizingly slow and dangerous, testing both their physical and mental endurance. Then the unthinkable happened. As Simon lowered Joe down a steep section, Joe went over an unseen ice cliff, leaving him dangling in midair. Simon couldn't see or communicate with Joe, and was unable to hold the weight much longer. The icy wind howled as Simon made a gut-wrenching decision. He cut the rope. Joe plummeted into the void, landing in the depths of a crevasse. Simon, believing his partner to be dead, descended the mountain alone, devastated but alive. Little did he know, Joe had survived the fall. In the freezing darkness of the crevasse, Joe awoke, battered, broken, but alive. With no rope, no way to climb out, and his leg useless, he was trapped. But Joe refused to give up. Crawling deeper into the crevasse, he found a narrow opening and miraculously emerged onto the glacier. For 3 agonizing days, Joe crawled, limped, and dragged himself over miles of jagged ice and rock, fueled by sheer determination and the will to survive. He battled dehydration, frostbite, and the crushing pain in his leg. At one point, hallucinations set in, but he kept moving, inch by inch. Meanwhile, at the base camp, Simon, racked with guilt, prepared to leave, certain Joe was dead. But just as he was about to depart, he heard something, a faint, hoarse cry. It was Joe. Against all odds, Joe had made it back. Simon rushed to help his emaciated, barely conscious partner. Together, they defied the mountain that had almost claimed both their lives. Joe Simpson's and Simon Yates's ordeal on Ciudad Grande remains one of the most incredible survival stories in history. Their tale is one of friendship, sacrifice, and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. Joe later chronicled their experience in his book, Touching the Void, a gripping account of survival against impossible odds. Survival is not just about luck or strength, it's about resilience, hope, and the unyielding will to live. These incredible stories remind us of the power of the human spirit to overcome even the most impossible odds. Which of these stories resonated with you the most? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more extraordinary tales of survival and courage.